Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What a wonderful way to end this year after all of the things that are happening to commemorate and felicitate a wonderful man. And when you see Mr. Menon from a distance, you see success, you see buildings, you see money, you see billions. But when you actually sit with the man, you actually find out what he is truly about. And that is what we're going to talk about today, his heart, his core, and how his secret sauce, and every successful person has something very special, and he indeed has a lot of very, very special things. As Samar mentioned, this was a rags to riches story. 50 rupees and now into billions. And it's an amazing journey, and not many of us can even comprehend the kind of trials and tribulations and activities that you had to go through to reach to this particular zenith, this peak that he's at. So we'd like to start with talking to Mr. Menon, and yeah, that's exactly what I was waiting for. And Mr. Menon, we have a couple of photographs that we'd like to share with you, because that's probably the best way to introduce you and move this thing along. There's a very young Mr. Menon right at the top. I think he's in Oman, and Sultan Qaboos's picture is right at the back. Where was that, sir?
The table, actually, that's the first table in my life, office table in my life. I did not have sufficient money to make a table at that point of time. So it was very crudely made. I have not changed the table. Okay. It is still in my Muscat office where I started my business.
Okay. And the second one here, which is very interesting, is a little design there.
Yeah. It is actually in my factory in Muscat, where it is meant for the palace of Sultan of Oman. And that is Mr. Obin Hill, who was the chief executive of National Bank. I do not remember the lady who she is. I don't remember.
Okay. These are just some of the amazing buildings and construction that you put together. And some of these, some of the work that I've seen. I mean, that could have been Paris in the Louvre, but it's in Mysore. Okay. And what inspired you to bring all of this back into India?
Actually, the decision of making that building, which looks like a pyramid, yes, was actually an idea from Mr. Murthy, Narayan Murthy, okay, who's the chairman of Infosys. Okay. I only built that for him. Of course, we designed the building, okay, and we built it for him. The idea came from him.
I see, yes. I see. These are additional examples of some of the palaces that you decorated, yeah, and developed. What fascinates you about getting into a palace? Why not just a small home? What is the fascination there?
It is actually not a fascination, it is only an evolution.
Okay.
You know, we started very small. I mean, my story is that, you know, I started very, very small. I started with a small studio, photographic studio. That was my first job in Oman. Yeah. But over a period of time, you know, we got to qualify yourself to do the palaces. So I was slowly equipping with, in terms of capital, in terms of the infrastructure, right, to do a palace job, because it's not that easy to get into, because it's a competition worldwide, and it is a dream for any person in the line of business. Right. I do homes also for others, but generally I do not do small homes. I do palatial homes, palatial offices, and palaces.
Yeah, we can see some of those. I'll stay with this image for a little while, because I think it helps to set the tone. Your wonderful wife, Sobha ji, is here, and your daughter Bindu, and your son-in-law. And it's wonderful to see a family coming together, and you sort of see a lot of happy faces there. As a father and as the head of this family, what did you do right to have so many happy people?
It's you know, the most important thing in a person's life is his family. And it's very important that, you know, you have to keep them happy, whatever you have to do.
The reason I ask that question is, as somebody like yourself who started from a very humble beginnings and rose right to the top, you must be working 26 hours every day. When did you have time for your family?
I don't socialize. I'm not a party person. I got plenty of time after 8:30 in the evening.
Right.
So I spend my time with the family, with my grandchildren. I have enough time. But the only thing is I don't socialize. There's so much of time available every day.
Right. Let's go back to the early days of your life. If you were, I think you were about 10 or 12 years old, what were the turning points in your life at that point in time? Tell us about your father and your mother, and how that affected your life as you started out.
Actually, I come from a business family. My father was a very successful. Those days, we are talking about the early 50s, late 40s. He was in the transport business. We had trucks. It was very rare, especially in a small town like Thrissur, where I come from. That business was very unusual because I don't think there were many businessmen in that area of business. And unfortunately, my mother was mentally sick right from the day I can remember. And she used to spend half of her time in the mental hospital. So it was a tough childhood. And on top of it, I lost my father when I was 10 years old. That made a lot of difference. The business crashed, and there was nobody to take over the business. The eldest member of the family was about 15 years old, and I was 10 years old. My youngest brother was 8 years old. So things were very tough.
What kept you going? What was the most important thing in your life at that time? Was it education? Was it working? How did you evolve yourself?
Education, I dropped out of the university. I didn't complete my degree. And the most important thing that I've seen is I was very ambitious right from the beginning. Even today, I'm 66. I still look at things, which is the next 15 years, what can I do? That still continues. So I think probably one of the ingredients for my growth or my evolution has been the ambition.
What drives you? What's that spark? What's the catalyst inside you which says, I get up in the morning and I jump out of bed?
Yeah.
What do you do for that? I'd love to have that. Wouldn't a lot of people want to know how you jump out of bed and get excited?
Certain days I don't want to jump out of the bed, but I ask a question to myself. You better get up and go. So certain days, especially at this point of time, not at this point of many times in my life, I never wanted to get up and start the day. But then, you've got so many things to do and pushes you.
So what are your early memories in your teens and so on? Is it hard work? Is it working closely with your brothers? When you sort of close your eyes and you go back and you think of it, what do you see?
The younger days?
On a day-to-day basis, what was inspiring you? What was connecting you? What do you remember? Because when I was 16, I remember school, sports, running, things like that. What are your memories?
I think my memory is not a great memory because it has been a struggle right from the beginning because, this kind of environment, where I come from a business family, very successful father. At the same time, we lost everything practically. And then it's only ambition and looking to different direction, how exactly we have to achieve. But one thing was very clear. I wanted to be a business person right from day one.
Now let's move into your business life.
Thank you.
Business person from day one. There are a lot of entrepreneurs here who actually want to be business people from day one, so I'm sure you're an inspiration for them. Let's get into your business life. You came into Oman. Can you just tell us exactly how you set up? Because everybody here is very keen, including myself. How do you literally set up your company one at a time and then build this thing brick by brick? What was your first action?
Let me tell you about the background of my coming to Oman a little bit. I met a gentleman by name Captain Suleiman Al-Adawi, who was an Omani who came to buy a fishing boat to a place called Kochi in Kerala. And I met him accidentally in a hotel lobby. That was the beginning of the trip to Muscat. So we started a conversation, and he said, "What do you do?" I said, "I do small interior business." So he said, "I come from Oman, Sultanate of Oman." I never heard a country like that at that point of time. We are talking about 38 years back. So anyway, he said from Sultanate, naturally an Arab. So the perception was at that point of time was he will have few oil wells in the backyard. The real perception. I mean, anybody for that matter, you must be a very rich person. So he said, "Why don't you come? It's a new country. There are a lot of opportunities in Oman. Why don't you come and we'll?" So I said, "Here I meet a very rich man. He is prepared to call me to his country to do business. Why not? I have nothing to lose." There was nothing.
Yeah.
So I packed up. Within about 3 months, I got my passport. I didn't have a passport at the point of time. And I didn't have any dream to come to Gulf, because I thought I'll build some business in India. So I came, and he picked me up from the airport, and he came in a beautiful Datsun 280C car. For a person who has seen only Fiats and ambassador of India, at that point of time it was a big dream. And he drives me to his office first, and then to his house. Then I saw his house. It was a flat 3-bedroom. I said, "He cannot be an oil sheikh anyway." Staying in a 3-bedroom house. So the dream did not collapse. So I asked him a few questions in between, Then I knew that he was working as a captain in the army at that point of time. And then I said, "Okay, here we are equals. There's nothing special." I thought, I can get $1 million next year and start the business. Pump a little extra oil for myself.
Right.
And I also become a millionaire overnight. But then we started talking, and then he said, "I don't have any money." He said that. "So how do we start a business?" I said, "What is the minimum that you need?" I said, "Any minimum is okay for me." So we borrowed 3,000 riyals from a bank in Oman, in Muscat, Bank de Paris, and that was the initial capital of the business. Then, all the Indians, generally what they used to do is, whatever money they make, the next day it will be transferred out of the country. I decided, I came to this country with nothing, so I have to build my capital. So I started saving whatever money was saved, nothing was sent out. So we started building the capital and the infrastructure of the business.
Is that one of the secrets of building a business?
I think capital is a very critical thing. You have to build capital, and you got to necessarily build whatever infrastructure is needed for the business too. In my case, I needed a factory, I needed some vehicles, I needed men to work, and offices, etc., etc. I think within about 7 years, I built one of the most beautiful factories in the country from my entry.
So in terms of risk, what was the collateral for the 3,000 riyals that you borrowed?
His personal signature was the collateral.
Okay, so therefore you went into a business working hard, but no risk.
There was no risk because there was nothing to lose, because there was nothing, no money in hand. So there was no risk.
So you have grown and developed your business in the early days without taking that much risk.
Yeah. I will say there is no risk when you don't have money. But then, the challenge of building a business is not easy when you do not have money. And especially in a new environment, a different country, you come from a different culture, the background is not good enough to do the business that I was doing. Interior business in India is completely different. I'm talking about 38, 39 years back.
Can I fast forward you 39 years forward to today, just for a moment? Because when you were doing business in the 60s and the 70s, was it as difficult as it is today? Or was it simpler, and therefore hardworking, smart people like you can make it, while there are a lot of hardworking, smart people here who are just struggling and bumping their heads into each other because the markets have become so competitive and so tight?
I think for a businessman, first of all, a businessman should have the DNA. So long as you have the DNA, any environment, if you put me back again, for example, I'm 66, I'm in a new environment, I have started planning for the next 15 years. starting with the 1st of January 2015 to 2029, 31st December. And it is completely greenfield. I'm not talking about the business that we are doing in Dubai or India or other countries of the world we are currently in. I'm not talking about that business. So I feel that there's a huge opportunity still waiting, not for the purpose of money. So for businessman, he will always find an opportunity. Today, yesterday, day before yesterday, or even 20 years back, 100 years back. In future, even 100 years ahead. He will find an opportunity if it is a businessman.
So there's something deep inside each individual which you have, which enable you to be successful in business.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so let's now start developing your business. You had 3,000 reals, you put your capital back in. How did you reach your first $1 million worth of wealth? Because that's the most important and the most difficult.
Yeah, because I started in 1976, say 77. 76 September I landed, 77 we started. 84 I was worth $1 million. 1984, 7 years back. First $1 million is difficult.
Okay.
Yeah.
And once the first million is there, does it start getting easier, or?
Sorry?
This gentleman is saying it's more difficult after the first million, because this gentleman wants to spend his first million immediately, right? There you go.
I think first $1 million definitely a very difficult task for a person who does not have capital. I say that 7 years I've wasted. So next growth is not that difficult. The first $1 million is really difficult, especially if you start with my kind of background. No education, no geographical knowledge, no skill in the particular industry that I'm in, and a stranger. All that put together with no capital, it makes it very, very difficult.
You got involved in the construction business, an interior decorating business. What tilted you towards that? Because you just said, the things that you didn't have. So why did you go into interior decorating, which is quite a tough business?
I will tell you that there's a reason also how I started. There was a friend of mine who used to do interior.